Hello, 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 family. Welcome to another episode of He Said, He Said, He Said. I look at the world from a seasoned Black man perspective. I'm Alvin King, and happy Memorial Day 2021, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to another show tonight. We are diving back into Managing Your Health series tonight. So we have a very important show outlined for you guys. But again, we are happy that you are here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said, it is Memorial Day weekend. And I think that I'm going to use this weekend to look back and reflect and be grateful for just where I am today. A lot of people lost loved ones that did not escape COVID's wrath. And if this past year hasn't humbled some of you in some way, I don't know what it will take. But on the other hand, there are those of us that are struggling in a large degree in putting our lives back together after dealing with the after effects of this pandemic. So tonight's show, we're talking about some of the cause and effects of post-pandemic trauma, PPT. We truly made that up, ladies and gentlemen. So keep it close to you. And with the very special return of our guest, Dr. Donita Holmes, we plan to talk about how to address the emotional backlash from moving forward, how to face and acknowledge your post-pandemic fears, and we will even discuss how dealing with the generational pain and trauma that still exists surrounding this pandemic. But before we do all that, I need to bring in the other he said, he said, he said. Come on in here, fellas, Mr. Vosh Bodie and Mr. Jacques Whitfield. How you guys doing tonight?
Good evening. Hey. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
As you can see, I'm at work. This is really weird because I've been talking about, so this topic is so relevant because this is my first day back at work in a long, long time. It's still pretty empty out there, but yeah, crazy what it's like being back at work on the West Coast. So.
How is that kind of weird for you though, Jacques, being in there? I mean, the first time?
You know, it is because, again, and we have one of those 21st century work collaboration spaces. Mm-hmm. And since the pandemic, all those areas that were really one of the great amenities about being here. So they're all off limits. They've all been deconstructed. We had all these wonderful commuting spaces or convening spaces. And now, yeah, it's all gone. It's so weird. Because we have these, our workspace is very, very cavernous and that, no walls, lots of opportunity for collaboration. And, even though we're technically open, we're still holding on to the guidelines about social distancing. So it's just really, really odd. It's like, this is work, but kind of like not really work because it's just not the same.
Yeah, right. I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah. How are you, Mr. V?
I'm doing all right. It's good to be here with you too. It is. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I know I have something that again, you know me, I have to talk about something. I don't know if this happened in where some of you are living, but where I'm living, we are in the world of cicadas. And It has like dominated. I am on vacation right now, so I'm not home. But where I am in Delaware, there are no cicadas. But when I left my neighborhood, you could hear them, you can see them. They're on the ground mating and all that. But the thing that's bothering me right now is people are eating them. I love good food, but all this talk about eating cicadas, something that's been in the ground for 17 years and have come out during the pandemic, and people talking about eating them and making them their today's meal. I cannot get with that, y'all.
I can't get with that either. Are they high in protein? Or are they supposed to be like locusts or?
I won't even do my homework on because I just want them to go away because they're all over everywhere. They fly into your car and you could be walking down the street, they will hit you. And now they're in the trees peeing on people.
My God.
They are peeing on people when you walk down the street, and the news is reporting that. So it's like, ugh. So if cicadas are not in your neighborhood, be grateful, okay? But they have given me trauma. Let me say that, okay? Because I don't like them. Hey, Blue, how you doing?
Well,
Hey,
I have
Robert.
looked up cicada recipes, and people are doing everything from making cicada cookies, popcorn cicadas, like you're deep frying them, which of course makes sense. Most things are good when they're deep fried. But
Yeah.
then the cicada cocktail is what's getting me.
The cicada cocktail, Bosch, you got to tell me more about
You
that.
mean
Okay, let me
cicada
tell you.
cocktail in your drink?
There's a cicada cocktail. So shake all ingredients with ice and use a fine strainer into a chilled glass. Let me get past the advertisements. It's 2 fluid ounces of bourbon whiskey, a fluid ounce of Disaronno Amaretto, a half a fluid ounce of single cream or half and half, and then a third fluid ounce of simple syrup. So it's going to be almondy, whiskey-ish with a little cream thing going on. It's like a buggy Bailey's, basically.
Yeah.
Uh,
I like the Buggy Baileys. I think you should coin that term. Yes.
Cicada
well,
cocktail.
you can keep it because it's truly not in sync with what this woman said the other day about eating it. And she said it tastes like a little bit like asparagus. It's buttery. And she was trying to make it sound like it was so delicious. And I'm looking at the television going, if you don't get off this screen talking about eating a bug that's been in the ground for 17 years. But okay. I'm over my trauma. I've expressed it. I've got it out. So let's get on with the show, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Joining us again tonight is Dr. Donita Holmes, PhD, licensed clinical social worker with a degree in industrial organizational psychology with a specialization in organizational psychology. She has been providing licensed mental health services for 20 plus years to children, adolescents, and families. And tonight, Donita is with us to talk about post-pandemic traumas. How you doing, Donita?
Hey! Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me back.
Welcome back. Thank you for coming back, first of all, because you were very well received.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thanks.
And she's acting all surprised. Don't y'all love that humility?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So tonight, I definitely looked at this show as I look at all the shows that I hope he said segments are about. But this is a very resourceful show because we are coming off of a hellacious year of the unknown, and we're now going into another era of the unknown because it's the post-pandemic part of it. So we do have some topics that we're going to cover, and Donita, actually, as much as she's given us her professional opinion on some of the topics, she's a part of this discussion. We want to just make sure that we have a raw and honest discussion about post-pandemic trauma. So I'm going to kick it off by just saying, let's talk about this whole topic now of proving that you're vaccinated. Let's talk about that.
How do you feel about it?
Well, I think that proving that you're vaccinated, I've always felt like since we've had to do it, that I think it's something that should be done. But where the trauma and the drama and the conflict comes in is where state to state, or how the federal government decides to do it versus the local government. It's so confusing, and whether you're going to do it for churches or you're going to do it for event spaces, it's in my opinion, I think that you should have to prove that you're vaccinated, because this whole trust thing that they're talking about, I'm not feeling it. So yeah.
Yeah, the trust thing is really weird, especially, the work I do in the HR space. And my sister is in DC. So she's in DC, I'm in California. So we got East Coast versus West Coast going. And then her job is actually mandated people to do the vaccines. So there's all this energy coming out from here. In California, we're still trying to figure things out. We're giving general guidelines, but that trust is coming up, Alan. And I totally resonate with where you're at, because it leaves me uncomfortable as well. And you don't know how far to pry in terms of this is technically confidential medical information, right? And so how are we managing that and managing people's agency and, ownership and, the way they're dealing with their own health and wellness. And so it absolutely is creating trauma, even from the administrative standpoint of trying to figure out where everybody's at. So I'm totally resonating that of the energy and the angst that it's creating.
Here's the deal. I remember us all having to get vaccinations to travel. I think most of us, we're at the age where we probably still have a smallpox scar. You had to show that when you traveled. You had to show that. It wasn't about protecting your own individual, medical history. It was about protecting everyone else. I have no problem with people needing to show a vaccination card in order to do certain things.
I have a question.
Sure.
I want to pose a question. What is the ultimate goal of showing the card if you go to, say, a club or a restaurant? What's the end goal of why a business or a venue would say, I need to see if you're fully vaccinated?
I think, aren't they trying to create a safe space? You're trying to create a safe space for your patrons, for customers. You're trying to communicate that this place is safe, especially as, Alvin so beautifully laid out at the beginning of the show. We've had a year and a half of this pandemic where the world shut down. People are apprehensive about coming back into open public spaces. So I believe, Dr. Danita, one of the reasons that businesses are doing this is to create safety, also to guard against liability, kind of things of that nature. I wonder how effective it is, though, however.
So that's why I posed the question, because the vaccination is not a cure, it can still be passed. Mm-hmm. It can still be transmitted whether you're vaccinated or not. Those who are not vaccinated are considered still at higher risk. So it's a safe place for, I guess, those who are vaccinated, but those who aren't, it would put them at risk by being there either way.
Absolutely.
Not having the vaccination.
I think part of it is really reducing the trauma of the fear of re-entering the whole pandemic. Right. I think that's the reason, one of the reasons. The other reason is to really try to stop the spread and encourage people to get the vaccination so that, the world doesn't go through this again.
Well, can I pick up on something that you raised earlier? You talked about smallpox. You talked about once upon a time. And yes, I absolutely remember those times. And that was when, as like Star Wars, long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, when everything wasn't so politicized. When you and I, all of us are in the same generation, right? We had school vaccines. We had vaccines for traveling and whenever you're going to go get a visa to go to another country. But that's not in the age of social media. That's not in the age of all these hyper conspiracies. That's not where all the, what's the term? Alternative facts, way before that. Right. Because it's amazing how difficult these conversations are, as you pointed out, in the space that we're in now, that everybody's looking for a conspiracy or counter conspiracy or, something that the goal doesn't seem to be, as Dr. Dini was asking, it doesn't seem to be, we're all on the same page about creating a safe experience, creating safe communities. There's always an angle, right? And it seems like it's so polarizing now.
Well, and we kind of, dove into it just a little teeny bit, but when we talk about the trauma piece of it and the conflicts, and I see some of our viewers have been talking to what I'm about to say. When we talk about the conflicts that's associated with the trauma, just think about going back to work, like you said, Jacques. And we have the states are versus the CDC directives. And so here we are prepared to go back to work. The CDC says something, but your state or your government says something different. So the trauma of even thinking about and the anxiety associated with having to go back into an office where you're giving all these different directives is, I don't know. I think it's kind of overwhelming. And I'm one person who will be in that pool of people at some point, going back to work. And so I don't know, or maybe in our summary, or as we talk about that, I just want to know, how do people deal with that? And just in general, how do you see people dealing with those uncertainties when your state is saying something, CDC is saying something, and your job is saying come back to work?
Well, a great example is right here in South Carolina. So you have the governor who says masks are no longer mandated to wear. Vaccinations are still not mandated either. Okay. Schools are in conflict because they're like, we want kids to come back. So we're not going to listen to the governor. We're going to listen to DHEC, and we're going to still require kids to wear masks. And then you still have the age just got lowered to 12. So everyone 11 and younger, none of them are able to be vaccinated at all.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So these are like constant conflicting things. And I think, was it Jaquez that said his sister's job made it mandatory? Like, how does that work? How do people experience that mandate? For lack of a better word, is that, my job is in jeopardy if I don't do this? Well, and that doesn't necessarily help people build trust either, not even in their employers, when they're being mandated and people have this sense of, well, I may lose my job if I don't do this. If I want to be able to go back to work, I have to do this, not my decision, but something that's being forced upon me. And that's something to keep in mind too. Go ahead, Bosh.
Well, what about, we deal with that with drug testing. People get drug tested. You're being told you can't do certain things, or you must abide by certain rules in order to work here. How is that any different?
And that's something that is not across the board either. That's specific professions. Because in some areas you can't force that. You can't, right. So it depends on your job and what you do. You go in knowing that you are subjected to random drug screens. And so before you even say, I'm going to come on this job, you have the choice to accept it at the beginning. It's very different when you've been somewhere for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years and somebody says, well, now this wasn't what I signed up for. But now they're saying, unless you get it, you can't come back to work.
It's like getting new terms of service with Apple. Like, here's your new terms of service.
Exactly.
Or log off.
Dr. Danita, you mentioned the schools. You mentioned South Carolina and the schools being open. I'm wondering, is there also trauma that's being created, not just for students, but for parents, for teachers, for administrators? Because like you said, and that's not happening just in South Carolina, it's happening all over, where we see there's this pressure to reopen, and the rules are changing. And it goes back to Alvin's point. Who do you trust? I mean, if I'm a parent, I'm trying to do the right thing. I want my child educated, but I know you're telling me 6 feet apart. Now, we just heard in California that we've modified that 6 feet to 3 feet. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If nobody's been vaccinated and, none of the major things have changed, and you're opening schools and elementary school children still can't get vaccinated. What are my options as a parent, and what is that creating? What kind of energy is that creating in me?
And we're seeing a lot of increased stress, like severe stress, anxiety, and depression, just with parents having to grapple with, do I send my kids back to school? A lot of parents don't want to send their kids back to school, but yet we have school districts who are limiting the options. At the beginning of the year and up until the holiday, they had 3 options. You had online, you had online school hybrid, where they could go sometime and stay home and then part in school. And then once they got to the phase 3, where it was now down to 2 options, hybrid is no longer an option. Either you're in school or you're online. And now they're talking about phasing away online because of the vaccination. But you have a whole elementary level age group who can't be vaccinated at all, who could be carriers.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Who have to go back home to families every day.
Exactly.
So, and then you have parents who are dealing with the stress of, do I go to work in a place where vaccinations are not mandated, So I'm working, in an environment, and then I then have to go back home to my elementary child who cannot be vaccinated.
Right.
So it's a lot of angst that a lot of parents are experiencing now with those two issues.
You know what, you all, I'm going to do something, and this is truly sort of somewhat a slight apology to Vosh, because he is the host of our segment for What Y'all Said. But as you can see, our viewers are coming in really strong with some questions and comments pertaining to what we're talking about. So Vosh, if you will allow me, would you please address some of those questions that you see over there?
Go for it.
Yeah,
I got logged out, so some of them disappeared from my feed, so you will see more of them.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. I'm just going to name a couple of people who are here: Anthony Brown, Keith Jackson, Keith Branch, Blue Beatty, Lily Bull, who wants to have a chat with Blue offline or something like that. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We First of all, let me read something. Let me see. Keith Branch said, because people are still infected with the virus and people need to feel safe, especially in a closed environment. I think that was just speaking to Darnita's point about what is the purpose of showing your card. I think that's what Keith was actually talking about in that regard. And Anthony Brown, who actually commented on something that Darnita, or he liked something that Darnita said. He had an earlier question statement where he said federal government agencies have guidance where you can't even ask if one has been vaccinated. And so that's also for people who are going back into the workplace, that is creating a little bit of stress for people as to whether or not they want to come back. Blue Beatty also said that the virus is not a cold virus. It's a killing virus. And I'm assuming to that point, and you guys have been coming to these questions and comments so quickly, I just want to make sure that we address some of them before we go to what y'all said. So thank you so much for that. I'm sorry. So we can continue. I didn't want to wait and lose some of the energy that people have been putting into their comments tonight.
Into the conversation, because they are definitely a part of the conversation.
Absolutely. And Alvin, I really like that last comment that it's not a cold virus, it's a killing virus. And I think that speaks to Vash's first question about, and I love Vash's logical approach. Vash is the Dr. Spock of the group. But when you're talking about logic, I mean, this is not rocket science. Sorry to mix metaphor, but it's not. It's like, hey, this is a public safety issue. We want to make sure that people are safe. And so why don't we do what's in the best interest of the public? And I think that last comment certainly underscores that. But then again, you have this whole other thing of all these emotions, all these conspiracies, all the fake science, and who are we to believe? And, once upon a time when we were younger, we had a high degree of confidence in what, governments told us and what media told us. And I think now we're just in a different space, so that there's all this confusion and we're trying to figure out, hey, which way is up, and how do we move forward here in a logical way that makes sense, that protects people and protects privacies and all the things. And I think Dr. Danita is just confusing. It's just really, really emotionally confusing.
And we have to keep in mind too, since we had we termed the PPT, we coined the PPT for this podcast. We definitely have to keep in mind what trauma is. It's a distressing experience for an individual. What's traumatic for me is very different from what could be traumatic for someone else.
Yeah.
People's level of resiliency differs across the board.
Yeah.
And so one of the things where I try to help people find balance who are experiencing a decline in mental health, as we're trying to come out of this pandemic and this return to work and do kids go to school, is being respectful and mindful that some of the things that people are carrying are trauma that has been carried over years, that has been reinforced through generations, and that's real for them.
Right.
And to dismiss that doesn't help us get more people on board with considering that, vaccinating for the larger population. But to dismiss it I think we would be doing a disservice to everyone. But we have to acknowledge what this experience is like for people, and what may be traumatic for one person may not be for another. But that doesn't make it not as real to them as it is to us, or not as real to us. So,
and I think for correct me if I'm wrong, for clarity, when Dr. Donita talks about generational, the first thing that comes up for me is the Tuskegee, the Tuskegee Institute. What's the correct terminology for that?
The Tuskegee
experiment, where there are people who, whether they were a part of it, whether they really know what it is or not, people are still feeling and reacting to what happened during that experiment. And so, as Dr. Donita said, even though to me, I'm the kind of person that may say, okay, that experiment happened, but that was a time when we didn't have the technology that we have today. I see, and to me, even saying that, it sounds like I'm just writing off the people who may be going through that and feeling that way, but I'm not. I'm just saying that we're living in different times, and that's my only point there. Because as Dr. Donita said, what somebody may be experiencing because of something is completely different from how I would, deal with it or experience it. But I think that's what came up for me, that Tuskegee experiment, and how people are just really looking at that as a problem or their justification for not wanting to get the vaccine.
So I'm going to add to that. So not only do we have that piece of it from an historical perspective, but we still have disparities in healthcare for African Americans, period.
Yeah.
So if we continue to have disparities where our people don't feel like the medical professionals will treat us or take our feedback into consideration when we walk into a doctor's office, that reopens the wound. It may seem like, yes, the Tuskegee experiment was years and years ago, but there are little things there are these little minor, microaggressions that are happening to people today, just with the disparities in healthcare, that still kind of reinforce, can I really trust what these providers are telling me in today? Right. That's still, yeah.
Dr. Donita, I'm going to pick up off some notes that you shared with us when you were with us initially. And you talked about that there were levels of trauma. And you also made a reference to that these things can be triggering. It can trigger other things. You said it far more eloquently than I'm explaining it, but you talked about how this can trigger other things, or that what this experience has done is expose the ongoing situation, whether it's wellness or well-being, or how people have been managing, I guess you could call it, like the social determinants of health. So what else is this in this PPP terms, with all these things coming up? Are there levels of that?
It really, yes. And it depends on, again, when we talk about trauma, and that's why I thought it was important to define trauma, because it is experienced so differently based on the individual and depending on people's level of resilience. We have some level of resilience, but how resilient are we really determines whether or not a minor stressor balloons into depression or anxiety that can't be managed by your own, efforts. Because I think on the last time I was here on the podcast, we talked about, thinking about things that help you relax, whether it's reading a book or, exercising. But when those things no longer work, that's the red flag that it's gone to another level. And people have to recognize that. The other thing is that there are physical things that overlap. So when we're stressed, you could, things like getting a headache. Well, if you work hard, guess what? You normally get a headache, right? Mm-hmm. But now where we are now in this post-pandemic phase, it could be now that headache is not necessarily due to just the stressors at home or life, but you're now stressing because you're worrying about going back to work. You're worried about your kids now. So now it creates a whole nother host of potential physical symptoms that you have to be aware of and know Is it something that I can manage on my own, or is this at a level that I need to seek some additional help and support?
Dr. Dita, I have a question. So as we deal with this our PPT, our post-pandemic trauma, going out, what can we do when we're in a place where all of a sudden we're triggered because someone is not observing our space bubble? You know, we've gotten so used to having 6 feet apart for just general safety reasons. What can we do when we're in a situation where suddenly someone is too close to us and it triggers things?
So, like I always tell my kids, my clients, people I consult with, the only thing that we have the power over is what we decide to do for ourselves, and that is remove ourselves from the situation. And although we're talking about the post-pandemic, there have been people throughout this pandemic who have never worn masks, who have never respected the 6 foot distance. And so what I encourage people to do is you can only do what you can do for you. And that means if you have to remove yourself. So that's a whole nother piece that we could probably go on about is, you know, how that now impacts your life, where you have to still limit where you have access to going. Because I'll say, be careful, because there's people in this world, you can't have a conversation and say, excuse me, can you back up a bit? Look at the things that are happening on the news where you try to be cordial and you don't know what somebody's mental state is and whether or not you're triggering by even asking that question.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you could be talking to someone who doesn't believe in wearing the mask, clearly, because they're violating that boundary and they're too close.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
As a follow-up question to that, Dr. Danita, are there any other things that we can, while you're in the situation, in the process of removing yourself, are there other methodologies or are there other techniques that you'd recommend in terms of just bringing us back to center and calming us down while when we're challenged or when we're triggered by those situations?
Definitely separate yourself from the situation. If that means utilizing a restroom that may be in a general area that you can kind of just pull yourself away from. Other things that people are moving to now, which is a part of the culture, is curbside pickup. You can get curbside pickup for everything now. Everything, even going into JCPenney's has curbside pickup. You can shop online and they bring it to you. And that's one of the major things that I would say that keeps people safe when you can't really control other people. And we're in the midst of a time where nothing is mandated across the board. So if nothing is mandated across the board, we're all going to experience, you know, people or situations where there are going to be boundary violations. And the only thing that I would encourage people to do is what you can control, which is remove yourself, utilize those additional modes of shopping that have been put in place, like online or curbside pickup, or the, you know, order ahead and jump the line and get it and go out, so that you don't even have to stay standing in a place where you have to worry about someone standing behind you or, you know, in front of you and being too close to you.
And you know, over this past year, let me keep it 100. A lot of people have a lot of pent up anger inside of them. And so when they go outside, they're already ready to fight. And you don't have to accept every RSVP to an argument. You don't have to do that. But there are people who are going out right now who are looking and actively, you know, and this is to deal with, they call their own anger and aggression and where they are. They go out expecting to confront somebody that way. Look at what's happening with airlines right now, and how on the airlines, how all the fights and stuff. Can you imagine being up in the air and a fight broke out? We've seen arguments. We've seen people get mad when you put your seat back and all this stuff. But we're talking straight up brawls while you're up in the air because of someone sitting beside someone who they feel should have a mask on, but they're not. You know what I'm saying? And so in situations like that, you cannot necessarily remove yourself if you're on that window aisle and that center seat and that aisle seat is in the argument. You know what I'm saying? You're at this point, you're in that chaos. And that's a trauma that, again, I think is now help making people think about more carefully when they fly. You know what I'm saying? It is definitely not over. And I just wish that there was something, a fix or something that we could tell people, hey, look, check this out, do this. But it's not a one size fit all situation to me. It's not. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, it's become one of those things where wearing a mask has equated to whether or not you care about other people. So to see someone not wanting to wear a mask is them basically saying, I really don't care about you. And I think that that's kind of traumatic to be able to look and see, this person doesn't really care whether or not they make someone else sick.
Well, interesting enough, go ahead, Donita, I'm sorry.
I was going to, as Vosh was talking, I thought about, I went to yesterday, a great example. I noticed that people that are in service positions like food, who are either don't wear their mask over their nose, they wear it under their nose,
yes.
Or I'm very detailed, or I'm an observer, so I watch everything. So I'm standing in this line, and I'm waiting to in Subway to have my sandwich made. Two young kids, I know they were like, it was crowded, it was the two of them, and they were moving. And one of the things I just kept watching, and one person got my stuff together to, prepped my bread and got it ready. And then the young man who was working the register, his mask was here, and he was working the register, dealing with another customer. And he was finished. He was like, okay, you ready? And I said politely, I'm going to need you to change your gloves, and I'm going to need you to lift that mask over your nose. I don't want your droplets in my food.
Yes.
And you just took those gloves and you touched the register.
The money.
Touched everything. Yes. And so, of course, I'm sure having a job and risk losing it or getting a complaint sent up the organizational chain, he complied with that. But I think it's very different when you are approaching somebody on the street and you just don't know who you're approaching in that moment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is the opportunity or invitation for us, Dr. Donita, is to operate, we hear it in Sunday school, from Sunday school to therapy, operate with a greater level of grace for myself, grace for the situation, grace for others, because I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what someone is going through or gone through. I can only, yes, I have a concern for my own personal safety, but before I make assumptions, I loved your example. You asked politely, you're giving grace in the situation, because it goes back to the point that Alvin raised. People on really, really short fuses, and anything can trigger someone. And I'm wondering, is that, in terms of ways of being, as you're approaching dealing with these situations, are you giving guidance to your clients, to your the folks that you work with, to just be more mellow, or I'm wondering what advice or admonitions you'd give in that space?
I keep them focused on themselves and not trying to control what they want other people to do.
Yeah.
Even though I asked him politely, he could have still said no. Right. So then the ball would have been back in my court, and I had the control to say, I'm not going to pay my money for a sandwich. I don't care how far you got in the process. I can take my money elsewhere. I can just go home, and maybe that's God telling me go cook. I don't need you to get a Subway sandwich today. Right. So I repeatedly encourage them, because it is still a lot of underlying conflict people are experiencing. People are triggered, and you don't know what's going to trigger them. So focusing on themselves and not what they would like other people to do, that's unrealistic. That's an unrealistic expectation to think that you can make someone else do or be the way you want them to, for whatever reasons. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Donita, we're about to jump into our What Y'all Said segment, but I would like to encourage anybody, if you're out there and you have a question for Dr. Donita about PPT, now is the time to ask it. because, we're going into what y'all said, and we want to know what y'all said and what y'all have to say and what y'all want to know. Alvin, before we jump in, did you want to say anything?
No, I think there is so much more to this topic that, and we of course, everyone, we haven't allotted time to do that, and we are all about mental health, mental health awareness. We are all about that, and so we're going to cover this topic again in some shape or form. But thank you all. No, I don't have anything else before we go into what y'all said. I'm ready.
Right on, because people have been saying so many great things and given so much love to you, Dr. Danita, as always. It is such a pleasure to have you around. We stream, I think we're streaming on 9 different platforms right now. So in this What Y'all Said segment, I especially want to know where people are listening from. We can tell what platform you're on, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, but chime in, tell us where you're listening from, because we want to know how far we are reaching our audience. Also, we had a question of the week that went out over Facebook and I think Instagram. And our question of the week was, how are you feeling about health mandates being lifted? So please, in this segment, give us your answers to that, because we really want to know what's going on. But getting to some of your comments, working kind of backwards, when we were talking about people being triggered by past trauma, Dr. Danita, and being mistreated and having different levels of care within the African American community. We had someone who actually said, Cassandra said, especially Black women, that Black women are not really treated or listened to within the medical community. Do you want to maybe comment on that?
No, that's absolutely. We're saying that I work for a healthcare company, and we're still combating that on a daily basis. We see those discrepancies in treatment for African American women, African Americans in general, but then we see a disproportionate number with African American women and their timelines for getting treatment, the treatment that's chosen for them, their symptoms being minimized or being sent out of hospitals or from ERs because, they are oftentimes labeled as overreacting or over exaggerating their symptoms. And that has contributed to those disproportionate numbers increasing for African American women overall. So yes, that is still something that is very real and continues to happen today.
Right on. People are chiming in. We have people in DC, we have Amsterdam, we have North Carolina, we have my Aunt Debbie out in Chalfont, Pennsylvania, got the DMV. Hey everybody, how y'all doing?
Did you see this question from Bobby Edwards, where he said there are numerous instances that serve as the basis for the mistrust of people of color and the medical community? We still continue to receive substandard care and consideration overall. Yeah, that's very
Absolutely.
true. Very true.
With regards to our conversation about what you can do about having people get into your space bubble when you're out and about, Bernadette said, act crazy. People give you space and all the distance you want, Bernadette. I feel you. It's Bernard.
Bernard.
I'm so sorry. I saw Bernadette, but Bernard, thank you for that, because truly, that is the big secret. You act crazy, people will leave you alone.
And Bernard is coming all the way from Antigua. Okay.
Wow. Love that.
Okay.
That's great advice.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice.
Yes,
and on that whole subject matter of them changing from the 3 feet or the 6 feet to the 3 feet, I've gotten quite comfortable with the 6 feet, if I might say so myself, and I'm good. I don't care. When I go to the grocery store, I can still stand 6 feet away from you. My thing is when I think someone else is not respecting my space, of which they don't know I feel this way. So when I feel like somebody's breathing on my neck, I have to go into Alvin fix it mode. I fix me. I will move up, and if I will do things to try to get myself out of that situation. But if I see that the person is not being respectful, that's when the king look comes over, and I will turn around and I will look at you and I will say, I'm trying to move away from you. I will find something to say that's polite. I've been in that situation. and hopefully, and thank God, nothing has transpired that has been, out of line. But sometimes you just have to say what it is, because my life depends on me being honest with you. So yeah, that's the way it is. Okay. So,
and your mental wellness is more important.
I'll drink to that.
I mean, that's something to own. And whether you're removing yourself from the situation or feeling as though you need to say something in a polite and graceful way. As Jacques, you said, using grace, as Dr. Nina, you said, using grace as a means of going about. When we were talking about jobs requiring vaccinations, that sort of touched a number of different people. Keith especially, he was saying that it's not a cure, but it helps in a major way, and people still need to have proof that they are vaccinated. So we have some people who are really clear about needing to have that proof. Dr. Nita, you were sort of a little not as emphatic about that. Do you want to elaborate on that?
I think it's unrealistic at the time because unless the federal level down government is going to be able to say it's mandated across the board, this is going to always be this dissonance and conflict. So people can say what they want, but as long as someone says it's not mandated, you have the option. Mass restrictions are being lifted, but there's no mandate for vaccinations. It just, to me, creates more conflict and dissonance and divide because people have different, views and perspectives. They're coming from different experiences. And so for me, I pose the question, not so much to say it's bad or good either way. I posed the question because I want people to think about what will that do or gain by proving it when you're in a state where it's not mandated.
Yeah.
So what will that, to businesses?
Right. Yeah. And Alma had this, Alma said, you can't even ask where people work. So, she's like, stay out of my business.
Yeah.
Alma.
No, and I get it because isn't this, it's almost like we're going down a slippery slope because now where do we, once you open this door, now do I want to find out, say, for example, someone like myself who's HIV positive, I've self-disclosed, but there are lots of people who don't. And so you want to know about that. What else do you want to know about? What other proof or I get it. I get the balancing considerations, but I think that's what makes this conversation difficult as it is. Then when you add in 21st century mass media, social media, all the polarization, that I think that just puts this on steroids. That makes it just damn near like uncontrollable, right? I mean, how do you manage any of this in a logical, flowing way? It would be wonderful if we could come from the standpoint of this is purely, public health, but there are all these other things that enter into the equation, which makes it very, very complicated.
And
go
ahead.
No, go ahead. We'll make this our last note for this topic. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just going to say when Jacques was saying that's a great point. And until I think there's this level of acceptance and respect for whatever someone's choice is where we have to start for people to even be able to consider the impact of what it means to be vaccinated. Because the more we keep dividing, this whole topic of vaccination is getting swept into that same category of things you don't talk about at work or in the military or in, it's getting swept under the rug. You can't talk about this in public. People say we don't talk about religion. We're not talking about salaries. This is one of those things where it's like, we're not going to talk about vaccinations either. Who chose to get vaccinated or not. But that is being moved in that direction because of this polarization of people who are saying, and we don't have that level of acceptance that helps to move people in the direction. There's, grandma always said there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Dinita, as we wrap up this what y'all said section, and people will be able to listen to this show and stream it and comment after this live broadcast. If we get questions from people, we will definitely tag you, and hopefully you will be able to respond to any question that anyone may have about this post-pandemic trauma. Is that all right? Will you do that for us?
Absolutely. I'm not quick on this.
We'll make sure we bridge the gap and make sure that people get answers. So we want to thank you guys for listening again. And thank you for talking to us and what y'all said.
Well, again, thank you all for this enlightening topic. As we can see from our viewers, and I know personally, as some of you, this was a very interesting topic and one that everyone needs to stand up and take a look at. Post-pandemic trauma is real, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dr. Donita, for joining us tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're going to now move into our next segment of the show, Black Excellence, ladies and gentlemen.
Tonight on Black Excellence, we honor Taraji P. Henson. Taraji Penda Henson was born September 11, 1970 in Southeast Washington, D.C. to Boris Lawrence and Bernice Henson. Bernice was a corporate manager at Woodward and Lothrop, and Boris was a veteran, a janitor, and a metal fabricator. Taraji attended Oxon Hill High School in Maryland, where she met and fell in love with her fellow classmate, William Lamar Johnson. After graduation, she attended the Agricultural and Technical State University in North Carolina, where she planned to study electrical engineering. Shortly after arriving, she realized that her interests lie elsewhere, and she transferred to Howard University, where she was able to pursue her passion, acting. In 1974, while still a student, Taraji and William Lamar had a son, Marcel. She never let pregnancy or motherhood distract from her studies, and she graduated holding Marcel in her arms. Her first prominent role was as a vet in the 2001 comedy drama Baby Boy, and things were great. In 2003, however, tragedy touched her life when her beloved boyfriend William Lamar Johnson was killed. Not only did Taraji have to deal with her own grief, but she was suddenly a single mother. In 2005, Taraji rose to prominence again, this time as the loving and devoted Suge in the independent film Hustle and Flow. The film was nominated for 2 Academy Awards and won 1 for the song on which Taraji made her singing debut, It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp. She went on to receive a Best Supporting Actress nomination for her role as Queenie in The Curious Benjamin Buttons, and an Emmy nomination for her performance as the title character in the 2011 film Taken From Me, The Tiffany Rudin Story. On January 7, 2015, the hip-hop musical drama Empire debuted on Fox. We got to know Taraji as Cookie Lyon. This role brought Miss Henson widespread recognition and critical acclaim. She became the first African-American woman to win a Critics' Choice Award for Best Actress in a Drama. She was named the 2015 Entertainer of the Year at the 46th NAACP Image Awards. She also was nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series, and in 2016, she won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Television Series Drama. I'd also like to point out that in February of 2015, just 1 month after the debut of Empire, Ms. Henson posed for an ad for the No Hate campaign, showing her unwavering support for the LGBTQI communities. It's much appreciated. Time magazine named Taraji one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2016. She released a New York Times best-selling autobiography entitled Around the Way Girl, and she was praised for her starring role as Katherine Johnson in the historically based film Hidden Figures, which won her and her castmates a SAG Award for Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture. Ms. Henson is worthy of our recognition for just her acting, but tonight we are celebrating her for her work with mental wellness. In 2018, Taraji P. Henson founded the nonprofit Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. The foundation is named in honor of Ms. Henson's father, Boris Lawrence Henson, who suffered with mental illness challenges as a result of his tour of duty in the Vietnam War. Their mission is to provide support and bring awareness to mental health issues that plague our community. She is committed to removing the stigma of mental illness in the African American community and getting those who suffer this debilitating illness the help that they need. Through her foundation, Ms. Henson will increase the number of African American mental health professionals by providing scholarships to African American students who seek a career in the mental health field. She's going to offer mental health services and programs to young people in urban schools and combat recidivism within the prison system. In addition to providing direct support, the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation supports other organizations who educate, celebrate, and make visible positive impacts of mental health wellness. Ms. Henson believes each of us at some point in our lives has pondered God's purpose for us. After much prayer and discernment, I truly believe I've found mine. It is the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. This is our legacy. This is our chance to make a difference. Together we will break the silence and break the cycle. For all the times she has entertained us, for all the work that she does to ensure our mental wellness, we salute Taraji P. Henson. She is Black excellence. To find out more about the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, please visit borislhensonfoundation.org. For He Said, He Said, He Said, I'm Vash Bodhi, and this has been Black Excellence.
Thank you, Vash. Thank you very much. And we truly honor and salute Taraji P. Henson. Taraji, I hope you heard that tribute, because girl, Vash put it out there. Excellent, Vash. Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we are nearing the end of this fast-paced hour. And we cannot leave without thanking Dr. Donita Holmes once again for coming on the show on He Said, He Said, He Said, and enlightening us and our guests on this topic of post-pandemic trauma. Thank you so much, Dr. Holmes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hopefully you'll come back again, because, you know, you're pretty much adding on to the he said, she said phenomenon that we know that's out there right now. Okay, so please come back and join us again, please, when you can. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, next week, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a good one. It is Pride Month, the month of June, and we are kicking off a series of shows next week that we are sure that you all will be thoroughly entertained on. So before I mention next week's show, I want to thank everybody again for all the viewers for being online tonight. Thank you so much for being on again for one whole hour. We're going to address your questions. We see that you all are still coming in, and understand some of your questions are on delay. So sometimes they come in after we've kind of gone through what we've gone through, but we see you and we hear you and we appreciate you. And please share us with other people. Let them know that we are here and that they can also join us next, on our show every Friday. But next week, we have a guest. He has been featured in the Logo series, Shirts and Skins. He has guest starred on the hit NBC television show Law and Order, and he's even appeared in Beyonce's Freakum Dress video. But next week on the He Said, He Said platform, we will have an up-close conversation with openly gay ex-pro basketball player, actor, model, and motivational speaker, Mr. DeMarco Majors, ladies and gentlemen. So please join us next week. That conversation will be a conversation. DeMarco is, he just lives his life to the fullest. And we will talk more about that when we have him on the show next week. So again, next Friday, June the 4th, come on back, tell a friend. We would love to see you all on the show next week. And as I've said earlier, thank you all for joining the show tonight. Vash and Jacques, as always, thank you guys for doing what you do and doing it well. And that Black Excellence tonight, Vash, you're gonna make me throw a shoe at you, because that was good. that you did that thing. So ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe out there. Do something that you like. And if you can hug somebody without feeling the trauma of it, please do it, okay? Because now's the time. Have a good weekend and happy Memorial Day from He Said, He Said, He Said. Good night.
Night, everybody.